everyone, welcome to this explainer. We're diving into something today that can honestly feel kind of intimidating at first glance: remote collar operations. We're pulling directly from Sin City Canine's incredible at-home field guide. And look, my goal right now is to completely reframe how you think about remote collar training. It's not magic, it's definitely not a mystery. It is just a highly precise, incredibly easy to follow communication system. But to really get it right, you've got to treat it like you're a pilot. You need a rock-solid pre-flight checklist. So grab your gear and let's get ready for takeoff. Okay, so here's our flight plan for today. We'll hit gear configuration, pre-flight setup, system calibration, protocol A, protocol B, and wrap up with the handler's equation. Let's jump right in with section 1, gear configuration and the basic rules. So looking at how the gear is actually worn, you're going to have two entirely separate collars on your dog. First up is your standard collar. The absolute golden rule here: your physical leash attaches only to this standard collar. Right below that, you've got the remote collar itself, which needs to be turned on and positioned correctly. But here is the most vital, strict directive to remember: no leash attached to the remote collar, ever. No exceptions. The leash and the remote collar are two completely separate systems, and we absolutely have to keep them that way. Moving right along to section 2, pre-flight setup, covering power, fit, and charge. Think of this as your pre-flight diagnostic. It's a sequence you literally must run through every single time before you take control of this communication system. There are 3 mandatory steps here. Step 1 is power. You're going to hold the power button on both the collar and the remote until they both flash green. That flashing green light, that's your signal that the system is active and perfectly paired. If you see flashing red, well, it's powered down. Step 2 is fit. Now, the rule of thumb is that the fit needs to mimic a snug smartwatch or a snug belt. It absolutely has to make solid contact. Finally, step 3 is charge. The specs tell us we get about 1.5 days of total battery life, and it takes around 2 hours for a full recharge. The big takeaway here: charge it regularly, because honestly, a dead battery instantly ends your training session. Now, regarding that fit we just talked about, there's a critical snug test you need to perform. You're feeling for solid contact against the skin, and there's a huge warning here: if you can fit more than 2 fingers underneath that collar, it is simply way too loose, and your communication is absolutely going to fail. The whole system relies on physical contact to send the signal, right? So if it's just hanging loose like a necklace, your dog literally won't feel a single instruction you're sending. All right, section 3, system calibration and finding the working level. So you've got this calibration dial that goes from 0 all the way to 100, but the way this activation curve actually works is that you're slowly increasing that stimulation level from 0, and you're just looking for the exact moment you cross the threshold into a highly subtle physical response. I can't stress this enough. This is never about shocking the dog. It's totally about finding the absolute lowest baseline of communication. And we actually have a name for that baseline: the working level. It is defined as the precise stimulation level that causes just a slight twitch or an ear movement. That is literally it. I mean, if the dog is vocalizing or jumping around, you've gone way too far. We are only hunting for a subtle, barely noticeable physical acknowledgement. Just an ear flick, or maybe a subtle look around, just to confirm, hey, message received. Okay, so here is a really crucial point: the absolute golden rule of troubleshooting. What on earth do you do if your dog just isn't responding? I know the temptation is to just crank that calibration dial right up. Do not do that. Do not bump up the level right away. You've got to check the physical collar fit first. Listen, 99% of the time, your dog isn't just being stubborn. The collar has probably just slipped and is no longer making that snug, smartwatch-like contact we hammered home earlier. Just before we jump into the actual behavioral protocols, let's briefly touch on the daily operational schedule. When is the system actually on? Well, the collar is worn whenever you are home and actively present with your dog. And when is it off? You have to remove it when you leave the house or when you're sleeping. Oh, and a quick heads up: because it is worn so snugly, always remember to check your dog's neck for any rubbing irritation when you take it off. Just a good habit to get into. Let's dive into section 4, protocol A, the quiet matrix. I absolutely love how this is structured. So we've got 2 very different types of barking, which means we need 2 completely different communication protocols. First up is directed quiet. This happens when your dog is barking at a specific event, like, say, the UPS guy is at the door. The goal here isn't total silence. Honestly, a little barking is totally fine to alert you. But they must stop when you ask them to. It's a one-and-done deal. For this, your action is voice plus the remote. You'll say your dog's name once, say quiet, and push the remote button at the exact same time as your verbal command. Now, contrast that entirely with nuisance barking. This is when they're barking at forbidden targets, maybe kids just walking calmly down the street. The rule here is a strict never bark. You never want them sounding off at these things. Because of that, the remote action completely changes. You just push the button once every couple of seconds until they stop, but here is the kicker. You do not speak. Total handler silence. Which brings us to Section 5, Protocol B, the off command. All right, just like with barking, we're going to divide the physical world into two distinct categories. On one side, we have everyday boundaries. This is stuff like wanting your dog off the bed or the couch. For these, we use what's called the metronome timeline. Step 1, voice only. You say their name and the word off exactly once. Then you pause for 2 seconds. Step 2, voice plus action. You say off again and tap the remote simultaneously until they comply. But let's juxtapose that with the other side, the nevers. Things like counter-surfing or digging in the trash. These are 100% forbidden scenarios. And the strict rule for the nevers, 100% handler silence. You might be wondering, why on earth do we stay completely silent for the nevers? Well, it boils down to a concept the source calls the association splitter. And honestly, it is a brilliant psychological hack. By keeping your mouth shut, the environment itself administers the consequence, not you. You are literally taking your voice, your nagging, and your emotion completely out of the equation. If your dog puts their paws on the counter, you just tap that remote silently every couple of seconds until they back away. In the dog's mind, you didn't correct them. The kitchen counter corrected them. Moving into Section 6, the handler's equation. Now, the crucial point that really ties all of these protocols together is this beautifully simple mathematical philosophy. There's a direct relationship here. The equation is incredibly elegant. As the severity of the boundary increases, your voice decreases. For those minor everyday boundaries, the dog associates the correction with your voice. But for the absolute nevers, those high-severity boundaries like the kitchen trash can, your absolute silence forces the dog to associate the consequence directly with the environment itself. And that right there is exactly how you build a rock-solid boundary that your dog respects even when you aren't in the room. Finally, let's look at Section 7, troubleshooting support. Listen, if you're running these protocols at home and something just feels off or isn't clicking, there is a strict troubleshooting directive. Call or text right away. Literally, the worst thing you can do is stall out, let yourself get frustrated, and just wait around for your next scheduled appointment. The training team at Sin City K9 has seen absolutely everything, and they can more than likely help you work right through any hiccup over the phone in minutes. So please use that lifeline. So as we wrap up this explainer today, I want to leave you with a bit of a provocative question. Really challenge your current communication style. Think back to the last time your dog got into the trash or maybe barked their head off out the window. When your dog crosses a major boundary like that, are you accidentally rewarding them with your voice, your attention, and your emotion, instead of stepping back and letting the environment do the heavy lifting through silence? Master the silent consequence method, and I promise you'll completely transform your relationship with your dog. Thanks so much for tuning in, and happy training.